Generally speaking, the rule of thumb is the MIT or your Apache 2.0 are the good licenses. They're the ones who say you can do whatever you want with it. Of course, different organizations build their own software open source components for people to use, but they impose their own licenses on it. So there are obviously a long list of different license types. A lot of them fall under this copyleft, essentially saying you can use it, you're allowed to, but if you're trying to build a business out of this component, keep in mind, we will come back to you about that later from a financial standpoint. So as an organization, you want to be able to audit what licenses are inside those open source dependencies. And if there's a dependency using a restrictive license, you may have to make a business decision. If we're generating revenue off this product, do we want to use that software component? Yeah, a tough part is it's stuff we can't control, right? So if we casually introduce a perfect example is you have a requirements.txt file for a Python application, and you say, I have 5 software dependencies I'm introducing. I need them to build something, but I'm not going to write that code myself. Someone's already written that code. But those projects evolve, and naturally they introduce new transitive dependencies. So what looks like only 5 software dependencies, pretty easy to audit, pretty easy to understand the attack surface. Realistically, that's evolving, and then suddenly you have kind of hundreds and sometimes thousands of different software dependencies that are now something you need to have visibility over. And that's where it becomes hard. It's really understanding what exactly is inside a tech stack. So there's a few ways. I think the main one is we mentioned you generate your software build materials. This isn't a point-in-time solution. Yes, it serves the purpose of point-in-time, which is to say at that moment of generating the SBOM. So in our metadata, we see when it was generated, from which tool, in which format. We can see these were the dependencies, the versions and vulnerabilities associated with our components. However, as we mentioned, the tech stack constantly evolving. So this needs to be a continuous cycle. If we look at the Cyber Resiliency Act, DORA, and similar regulations, they're mentioning this has to be generated at the build process. So every time you build your application, you should be automatically generating SBOM and naturally storing them in something like a dependency track by OWASP. So you can actually compare what are the state of those, not just dependencies, but transitive dependencies and vulnerabilities.